episode 8, season 4 of the Fat Doctor podcast. I'm going to warn you now, this is going to be a bit raw, a bit real. Hopefully you've listened to the episode 7. If you haven't, then this is going to be completely and utterly out of context for you, so I suggest you stop now, go check out episode 7 first, and then come back to me. If you're watching me on YouTube, you'll see my face. If not, you'll probably hear it in my voice. It's going to be a painful one for me. Remember, last week I talked about how I was going to take my power back. I realised that to take my power back, I had to tell my story. And this is often the case. When you've been traumatised, the way to take your power back is to tell your story for 2 reasons. Number 1, it brings it out into the open. No more shame, no more secrets, no more hidden in the shadows. And number 2, this story is an important story. And it's how I'm going to cope, how I'm coping and how I'm processing the trauma. So without further ado, let's get into it. I'm going to talk about how the GMC's investigation of me has affected me as a person, as a doctor. And I want to just put this out there right now. Content warning. This is going to be a doozy. I will be talking about fat phobia. I will be talking about transphobia. And I will be talking about suicide and depression. If that's not your thing, if you're not ready for that, then skip this episode, please, because I'm not going to hold back. So I want to tell you where it all began. Up until 2020, I wasn't just a doctor. I was an appraiser, which means that I was part of the sort of doctor appraisal and revalidation process. I was the one that was appraising other people. That doesn't mean I didn't get appraisals on my own. Of course I did. But the appraisal process basically is once a year you have an appraisal with an appraiser and you discuss basically everything that is important and relevant to your fitness to practice, and then you sign a document, and there's also a few other things you have to do during a 5-year cycle, and then every 5 years you are revalidated, which means your license to practice medicine is renewed. That's how it works in the UK. Up until 2020, I wasn't talking about weight stigma, and I had no problems. I was successful, had a job, had colleagues who, I'm not going to say loved me, but, got on really well with my colleagues, never had any issues, you have to do get lots of feedback from patients and colleagues. I always had really good feedback from them. Life was great as far as I was concerned. And then 2020 happened. And as many of you know, that's when I started writing a weight loss blog, which turned into a fuck me, dieting really sucks blog, which turned into a hey, did you know that you don't need to diet blog, which turned into a diets really don't work, let's try something different blog, which turned into a hey, has anyone heard of medical weight stigma blog? And it's gone on from there. Now we have podcasts and we have not one but two, but now the 3rd Instagram account. I'm on TikTok, Facebook. I was on Twitter. I stopped being on Twitter as a result of the being inundated with hate posts, especially when a certain individual took over Twitter and it all went to hell. So I'm not on Twitter anymore, but it used to be. I'm on TikTok. Did I say that? I'm everywhere. Hey, I'm even on YouTube. What's up, YouTube peeps? I think there's like 10 of you. So during that time, so everything was great, and then the GMC came along and got involved. Once I went from my hey, weight loss is great persona to hey, weight loss sucks persona. And the reason that the GMC got involved is they don't know who I am, is because people complained about me, and people complain about me all the time, as you can imagine. People who don't like what I have to say will threaten me with reporting me to the GMC, because they know that threatening my livelihood is a way to silence me. And those of you who know me know that I won't be silenced. So whenever people threaten me, I'm like, here you go. My GMC number is 6077567. I publish it everywhere so that if you want to complain against me, do it. It's very easy for you to do. And so they did. And it started off, I think, in 2021. A very well-known doctor on social media, is Australian, thin white, promotes, weight loss. She put in a complaint against me. Someone else put in a complaint against me, I think, all about my social media posts, medical misinformation, yada, yada, yada. Right. So the GMC wrote to me for the first time back in 2021 saying, we're not going to investigate you, but you've done something bad. You must discuss it with your responsible officer during your next appraisal. At this point in time, I was like, okay, I was very upset. I didn't think it was fair, but I discussed it with my responsible officer, and we did the appraisal, and it was fine. And I had very positive appraisal, and there was no further action taken. And then all of this stuff happened, as you heard, what happened to me in 2022. And since then, this thing has been hanging over my head. During that period of time, I wrote a formal complaint to the GMC. After complaining on multiple occasions, but them not taking me seriously, I wrote a formal complaint to the GMC stating that I believe I had been discriminated against. Right? And I've not got it in front of me, which is a shame, really. I'll try and get it up whilst simultaneously doing this. That's not going to work, is it? Oh dear, oh Lord. Okay, anyway, I wrote a letter of complaint to the GMC, and it was 5 pages long, and I'm not going to read it all to you. But my main complaints, this is a summary of my complaint. I believe I'm being discriminated against because of my gender, I'm transgender, and my sexual orientation, I am LGBTQIA+. I believe I am being discriminated against because of my weight and my views about weight. I believe I am being discriminated against because of my views about race. I believe that the GMC is conspiring with those who are using my licence to practice as a means of bullying and harassing me for the 3 aforementioned reasons. It was a long fucking complaint, and you can read it if you want, because, as I said, I'm making all of this stuff public. You can also read the GMC's response to my complaint, which is also very important to read, because they basically turn around and say, yeah, like, we hear what you're saying, and, it's pretty bad, but tough. Which isn't great. We'll pass your comments on, and we hear you, but no. And so it was a very unsatisfactory response, but I bet a lot of you can relate to that, right? How many times have you written a complaint letter to a doctor or a medical professional and been fobbed off? Oh, we are sorry you're upset, but we'll pass your feedback on. Thanks very much. And that's the end of it. So when did I write that? Oh, I should be able to tell you. I think it was after the Rule 12 decision, which, from what I can remember, is November 2022. No, 11th of January 2023. That's when I wrote it, and I got the response on the 20th of January 2023. So about a year ago now, and that was the end of it. So this has been a really long, drawn out process for me. Just to remind you of the timeline. In 2021, I received the first set of complaints, which the GMC decided they wouldn't act on, but I needed to discuss with my responsible officer. In April and May 2022, so a year later, I received my second 2 complaints that the GMC had, again, ruled that didn't require further action, but that would be needs to be discussed with my responsible officer. Then later on that year, I received notice that they were going to look into it, that they were going to review whether or not to open another investigation into me. And then in November 22, they decided that they were going to open an investigation into my fitness to practice. And then I waited until November 2023 until they actually opened an investigation into my fitness to practice. And then finally, in January 2024, I was told that I was going to receive a formal warning for being racist and discriminating against people because of their gender and their sexual orientation, based on 2 tweets out of the however many. So I want to talk about how this has impacted me, because this is my fucking story and this is my fucking podcast, and I'm going to talk about how it impacted me, and I'm going to swear and I'm going to say whatever I want because it's my story. I'm not going to cry. I'm definitely not going to do that. To begin with, it has impacted me physically, and I'm going to talk about that because it's probably the least important thing. It's impacted me physically because it has caused a lot of damage to my body. For those of you who don't know, chronic stress causes inflammation, and inflammation messes with your body. And I have seen the physical manifestation when it comes to my own personal health. Things like my eczema has been really bad the last couple of years, and I've not been able to get on top of it. It's impacted my blood sugar. And it's impacted my ability to sleep. It's caused hormonal imbalances in me, and it's exacerbated a lot of the underlying issues that I've had going on. For example, I'm heading towards perimenopause. Well, heading towards perimenopause sucks, but when you're chronically stressed, it's even worse. So physically, it has impacted me, but that's the least of my issues. I want to talk about how it's impacted me socially, I guess. In 2022, I had a job. I had a whole bunch of colleagues who supported me, who cared about me. That was in 2020. By 2022, I don't have a single person left in my corner. Literally every single one of my colleagues has abandoned me. They refuse to write references for me. They refuse to acknowledge me. They talk shit about me behind my back. I haven't been able to get onto the performers list. So when I moved to Scotland, I moved from England to Scotland, and therefore I had to get onto a list saying that I can be a doctor in Scotland. And in order to do that, I need references from my previous employers. They just refused to give me one. I feel friendless. And you know what? I am so lucky to have you. I'm so fortunate to have this incredible community who has come through for me time and time again. But this shit has impacted me socially. It's impacted me financially, folks. In 2022 to 2023, I just filed my tax return. 31st of January, I filed my tax return for 2022 to 2023 from April to April, right? And I made, in total, £5,713 that year. That's how much money I made. I basically had to eat into my savings. The only way we've managed to survive, my husband is disabled and he is not able to work and will never be able to work again in dentistry because he's a dentist. And so he is not earning any income, and I have been the sole earner and will continue to be the sole earner for the rest of our lives. And when I went off sick originally, I went off sick with stress and burnout. That was back in 21. And that was actually partly to do with the GMC, but actually at the time it was more to do with burnout, COVID, and the fact that two of my 3 children were in and out of hospital. I don't remember how many times we went into hospital, but I think it was 18 or 20 times in 1 year we were in and out of hospital. So it was a lot. I was having a really difficult time. And so that's why I went off sick to begin with. But then all of this happened and I was planning to go back to work because I didn't have any sick pay and I needed to make money. And I couldn't because of this, because of how this impacted me mentally and emotionally, which I will talk about in a minute. But it has impacted my bottom line. Now, I'm not saying this so that you feel sorry for me. I am perfectly aware of the fact of how lucky I am that I had enough savings that I could survive and that I could feed my family and protect my family for the last couple of years. Plenty of people, if they lost their job, that would be the end of them, right? Like they would be homeless. I'm not homeless. I'm perfectly aware of the fact of how privileged I am, and I'm not complaining about it. But to get to this place that we're in right now, we had to sell our house, spend, eat into our savings, take out loans, etc., etc. So it's impacted me financially, but really, the main thing has been how it's impacted me emotionally. And mentally. I'm going to describe something now. And I don't know how many people can relate. The word that comes to mind is dread. The feeling of dread. Do you know what I'm talking about here, folks? When I think I was about 9 or 10, my dad locked me in a spare bedroom of my grandmother's house and beat the shit out of me. And I remember this very, very well. It's a very strong memory of mine. That's not the first or the last time he beat me. He was physically abusive. But he hit me so hard that I ended up on the floor. And then he started kicking me, and he was kicking me in my gut. And I was protecting my head. And then when he started kicking my gut, I think automatically I tried to protect my torso and protect my gut. And then I watched his foot coming towards my head. And in that moment, it was slowed down in my mind anyway, certainly in my memories. It was slowed down. I remember looking him in the eye in that moment, and he had this maniacal look on him. There was a movie that came out, I can't remember it, with Jessica Rabbit in. Oh God, I can't remember. But anyway, there's this character in it that's got like these eyes that like go around. They're really creepy. I just remember this from my childhood. You probably don't even know what I'm talking about. But the look was like freaking terrifying. And in that moment, I remember thinking, oh shit, he's going to kill me. I'm going to die. This is it. I'm dying. I was 9, 10, and I thought I was going to die on the floor of the spare bedroom of my grandmother's house. That was dread. And that feeling of dread, the way it impacts my body, how I feel it in my body, and I can't quite describe it. It is this intense, gripping fear. It's not fear, it's fear times 1,000. And I keep that. I hold this experience, this feeling in my body, and I have done for my whole entire life. That's dread. Every time I see an email from the GMC, that's what happens to my body. My body is filled with the same dread. Now, I know, logically, that the GMC don't have the power to actually kill me. I know, at the time, I believed my dad was going to kill me. And that's the feeling and the sensation I get. And I know that it's not actually like you're about to die fear. Like, it's not that serious, but it feels the same way in my body. And it takes me weeks to recover every single time. Weeks. When I think about what's happening, like the fear, the dread, this part of me, it's overwhelming. And I can't explain to you the impact that's had on me. I suffer with depression and anxiety, and I have done for a really long time. From my childhood, I had a very traumatic childhood. The first time, I had depression and anxiety when I was a teenager, and I had it all through my 20s, and then I had postpartum depression, which was not diagnosed, not until my third child, and even then it wasn't properly diagnosed. My postpartum depression was a different, it felt different to my normal depression, what depression normally feels like for me, in that I was plagued with terrifying thoughts, with these like paranoid thoughts that something's going to happen to the baby, I'm going to harm the baby, I'm going to drop the baby's going to fall out of my arms down the stairs, like there was death, constant fear of death. So lots of paranoid feelings, really heightened anxiety, more than the kind of apathy that I would get normally with depression. So I'd had a miscarriage, and I remember when I had the miscarriage, I just couldn't even get out of bed. It was just, I literally didn't get out of bed for 2 weeks. I just couldn't physically. After that, it was grief, it was trauma. And even normally with depression, when I'm having periods of depression, I'm usually quite I'm not quite with it, I'm very distant. I dissociate a lot. I'm very subdued. I don't get particularly anxious. But in these situations, when I'm filled with this dread, kind of like when I was postpartum, and like every time I read an email from the GMC, I go into overdrive, overstimulated rather than understimulated. So there's all this anxiety. I can't sleep. I can't think. I can't concentrate. I can't do anything. I am constantly repeating it over and over and over and over and over again in my head. I feel powerless. I feel like, what's the point? I feel useless and embarrassed and ashamed and guilty and scared and angry. And yeah, I'll be honest, there are times when I'm like, what's the point? First time I tried to take my life, I was 17. And I've made several attempts since then. I have to say, much less so over the last 10 years. I have been plagued with suicidal thoughts, and I often am. In the same way that when I had postpartum depression, I was plagued with paranoid thoughts about my children. But these weren't these were thoughts that came into my head in the same way I am plagued with thoughts of suicide. And when this stuff troubles me, when I begin to feel it in my body, my brain automatically says, you're useless. It's your fucking fault. Why didn't you see this coming? Why did you get yourself into this situation? It's all your fault. You should be ashamed of yourself. You're good for nothing. You're a lousy doctor. You're a lousy person. Look at what's going to happen. What's going to happen to your family? You're going to have no money. You're going to become homeless. All these thoughts over and over and over again in my head, and they don't stop. They don't stop. They don't stop. And every few months, the GMC starts it all over again. It took them a year between telling me I was going to have a fitness to practice investigation to giving me one. A whole year where I lived with it hanging over my head. Another 3 months before they actually told me what happened. And it's still ongoing because I'm not going to accept this fucking warning. Hell no. So it's going to keep going. I don't have any legal support. I don't have a single colleague I can turn to. There's nothing and nobody that I can reach out to. Gareth, my investigation officer, when he spoke to me, the first time I spoke to him, which would be back in November last year, I was hysterical. Like I tried to hold it in and I couldn't. I became hysterical. I hate that word because it's of its misogynistic connotations, but I don't know how else to describe it. I couldn't control myself. I was weeping and I was just saying the first thing that came to my mind. And I was telling him, I'm suicidal. Like I am having suicidal thoughts because of all of this, because of what you've put me through. And there was the kind of very patronising, placating, oh, I really care about you, Dr. Lamy. The fucking no, you don't. Because when you finally had to send me the email to tell me the thing, you did it on a Friday, 4 minutes before you left for the weekend. You don't care about me. You deliberately waited until that time to do what you did. But whatever. He said he cared about me. And you know what he told me? And this was incredible. He said to me, listen, I used to work for the police. I promise you I'm on your side. And he said that with absolutely no irony. He genuinely thought that being a former police officer or a member of the police force would reassure me in some way. I remember thinking, like, you really don't get it, do you? You don't get it. None of you get it. I want to do something right now. You might not like this. And content warning times a million. I've got to bring up this document now. I'm going to read you some of the hate mail. This is a document that I sent to the GMC to explain to them what it's like to be an Asian, Jewish, queer, trans, fat person on the internet. Dan Dawes says, I've got to bring it up in front of me. Here we go. Dan Dawes says, you're a fucking disgraceful charlatan. All right, Dan. I mean, kudos for, vocabulary. Oh no, is that it? Can't be it. Oh dear. I know I can't find it. That can't be right. Oh, dearie me. Well, I'll have to come back to it. Maybe I'll do an entire podcast where I'll just read through all of the nasty messages people have ever sent me. Maybe I'll just do that just for shits and giggles. We can make fun of them together. Maybe that's what I'll do. But anyway, that was just one of the many things. That's actually nothing like some of the hate mail I've got. I am called a she-brew. That I've been called that more than once. People make reference to my nose. They say I look like Danny DeVito as the Penguin in Batman. They make as many transphobic comments as they can. They know that they're very clever nowadays. There's certain words they can't use, so they use different words instead. I have been called every name under the sun, and you all know it. Like, just go check out my posts, especially on Facebook. They're incredible. Like, the things people say about me with no... I mean, this is why I took down Twitter, because Twitter just wasn't doing anything about it. People were, sending me like Nazi propaganda and all sorts of things. It was really quite shocking. And what I've realised is a lot of the people who hate me because I'm trans also hate me because I'm Jewish. But yeah, that didn't work out because I thought I had all the information in front of me, but I didn't. Whoops. Never mind. These things happen. Let's move on. So the GMC, their investigation into me caused me no end of distress. But they would argue, yeah, but, we're a professional body, we're a regulatory body, and it's our job. Your feelings don't come above patient safety. That's what they'll tell you. And they're right. And I agree with that. Like, if I had genuinely done something wrong, I would argue Sure. But if you remember going back to the original findings following the complaints, the findings were very clear. Look, sure, Dr. Lamia says things you didn't like, but they don't warrant an investigation into their fitness practice. Sure, you think that's medical misinformation, but, there are studies, and it's not our job to decide whether those studies are right or wrong. You might not like the things that Dr. Lamia has said, but we are not here to defend you against libel. That's, if you believe that you're being defamed, if you believe that it's libel, then call a lawyer. So I think that was reasonable. I don't know about you, but I think that was reasonable. Notice that they started investigating me because the follow-up was, yeah, but he, they in speech marks, what else did they call me? Designated female, designated male, is racist. Picking on white thin people. And all of a sudden, the GMC decides it's time to investigate. And they openly state that I am bringing the profession into disrepute because I am standing up against white supremacy openly and publicly. In my own way. Sure, I don't get it right 100% of the time. I'm sure I say things that I shouldn't say. I'm too inflammatory. I'm too much sometimes. I get that. Because I am standing up to people whom I have a real, genuine concern about. I'm not going into the details of the complaints, but as I said, I stand by everything I said. They're investigating me because they say I discriminate and that I'm not safe again with my patients. I'm not as a result, and that I don't know how to maintain confidentiality. That's the things that they said warranted further investigation into me. And I want to ask you now, is that right? Because last time I checked, you all share your stories about how doctors harm you on a daily basis, the things they say and do. Nothing happens. There are doctors on the internet that are saying all sorts of things about fat people and selling weight loss. Nothing happens. There are doctors that hate fat people openly and publicly. Nothing happens. But when I say something about thin people, not thin patients, by the way, because I don't have a problem. I do not condemn people who are trying to lose weight. I don't have a problem with thin people. I'm talking about structures and systems. And if you don't know the difference, then that's not a me problem. That's a you problem. Like, you need to learn the difference. You need to learn what white supremacy is. But if you, if that's bothering you, then I would argue that's more of a you problem than a me problem. It does not make me a racist. And they accuse me of reverse racism. It's 2023, 24 now, people. And they had the audacity to accuse me of reverse racism using the term colour. And I've said this now a couple of times. On what planet do we use the term colour? This is when I read it out to my husband. He said the person who wrote that still uses the word half caste and says coloured people, for want of a better word. Two massively offensive words, right? We all know why you do not use those words. Even in the States where you say people of colour, you don't say colour, you say race. They had the audacity to say, I have a racism problem, and they don't even know how to. This is a legal warning, but this is an official document. They don't understand why a transgender doctor is afraid of cisgender people. They say that makes me a danger to all my patients are cisgender. I have like 0 trans patients at the moment. For the last 5 years, I haven't had a single trans patient. All of my patients are cisgender. Has any of them ever complained ever in the history of my career of me being unsafe? No. The only reason people will complain about me now is because I'm trans and they don't want to see a trans doctor. Not because I don't like cis people. I don't have a single colleague that's standing by me. This is a society problem, not a me problem. The idea that I break confidentiality, I'm not even going to go there. That's disgusting. I cannot believe I'm being accused of this. But that's because thin white people who complained against me were upset that I didn't keep their confidence, that I exposed them publicly. Apparently, I'm not allowed to do that. Even though people do it all the time. I tried communicating with them. But actually, sometimes when you are in a place where you are the victim, you need to say no. And in this case, when it came to one of the complainants, I was protecting another victim. I was protecting a victim, a member of the public who was being treated really badly by this particular individual. So I stepped in on Twitter and I gave them what for. And they had to listen to me because I'm a doctor. So when I say something, people listen. And I don't like that because it shouldn't be that way. But they didn't like it either. I don't feel safe being a doctor anymore. I haven't felt safe for years. It's not safe for me to be a doctor, and I've realised that. I can't be a doctor when the people who are responsible for my licence treat me the way that they have, hold such, I would argue, racist and transphobic beliefs. I don't feel safe because I worry about the future. For example, we all know what happened to people in the workplace when they spoke up about Palestine, right? We've seen countless stories of professionals, really like people who had like secured professions, people with tenure at universities and people in positions of authority throughout many countries. We all heard about how they were literally just dismissed from their jobs, right? I'm a Jewish person with ties to Israel, family who live in Israel, family who I've cut off because of the way that they're behaving. I'm Jewish. I speak up about Palestine. Someone wrote to me the other day, I've spent 2 hours on the phone with the GMC reporting you for anti-Semitism. And, part of me was like, okay then. Good luck proving a Jew is anti-Semitic just because they're saying free Palestine and using the word genocide. Pretty sure that other people agree with me, so carry on. But the thing that really worried me was that, again, I can't trust the GMC to not investigate me for this. They've investigated me for less. So I don't trust them. And I think this is going to massively impact you. And you might be thinking, like, this has been two episodes now where you've basically been talking about yourself, Asha. Nice one. But this is why I think it's going to impact you. 2 reasons. Number one, there are very few trans doctors out there in the UK. Very few of us. Disproportionately fewer trans doctors than there are trans people in the world. I don't have the exact number, but now there's one less. So trans people do not trust doctors. We've got lots of evidence for that. And trans people need more representation within the medical profession, not less. The GMC is using its power over me to support cisgender people, to uphold cis hetero patriarchy, to uphold white supremacy. They're using their power to do that. And as a result, there will be fewer trans doctors, not more. So that's a real blow for trans people who need more representation rather than less. Now, here's the other thing. If the GMC hold these views and they're in charge of the doctors, what's going to stop them from preventing doctors from practicing with these views? Because, there are 4 really important fundamental pillars of medicine. One is to do what's in the best interest of your patient. The second is to do no harm. The third is to respect autonomy. And the fourth is justice. And in general medical, in terms of the General Medical Council, we call this Section 4 probity. It's all about justice and fairness. Are you practicing legally, fairly? Are you making sure that you don't discriminate against people? This is part of good medical practice. Probity. Part of probity is is making sure that you're sticking up for the people who are oppressed, who are who have marginalized identities, the people who don't have a voice, who don't have power, who have less access to healthcare. Your job is to advocate for them, to make sure that they are not discriminated against. And instead, if the GMC won't do it for doctors, how can we trust them to enforce that amongst their doctors? We have a racism problem in the GMC, and no doubt a transphobic problem in the GMC. We have major issues. There are significantly, disproportionately larger amounts of black, brown, and indigenous people being investigated and targeted by the GMC than there are white doctors. And we have seen cases of this. If you want to go look up Dr. Bawa Garba, classic case, Muslim black woman. Go check out how she was treated by the GMC. We have a problem in the GMC. Even the GMC admits that they have a problem. They just won't act on it. And I want to read you now. My final complaint to the GMC was, I'm tired. After I got, on the 19th of January, after I got this, I'm tired. But I believe that this ruling is a form of discrimination, and I want you to do something about it. So once again, I am making a complaint of discrimination. And I got a message from Paul Bridge, investigation manager from the GMC on the 23rd of January. That's the day before my 20th wedding anniversary, folks, just in case you're wondering. We have considered your emails under our customer complaint policy. And we recognise that you are unhappy with the service you have received. The service! Was it a service? Didn't feel like it. This is the first response in this progress. I'm going to read you paragraph 4 because, again, it's all on the internet. As you are aware, the GMC processes and procedures are underpinned by statutory guidance and legislation. All staff must also undergo mandatory equality, diversity and inclusion training, and relevant staff are trained in how to identify and be aware of unconscious bias. These factors are aimed at, amongst other things, eliminating any potential discrimination, and therefore Paul Bridge is satisfied that there are adequate safeguards in place to ensure that individuals are not discriminated against on any grounds. That's why I wrote my open letter. That's why I've made these podcast episodes, because I've complained, I've done everything I can in my power that I can do, and they are satisfied that there is no unconscious bias in the GMC. I don't know what to say about that. You decide whether you think that's true. Do you think that the GMC are safe for black patients, for brown patients, for indigenous patients, for transgender patients, for minority ethnic patients? Are they safe for queer patients, disabled patients, neurodivergent patients? Are they safe? Are they safe because they are the ones that hold our license to practice? Every single doctor has to be revalidated and appraised by someone representing the GMC. You want to know why doctors get away with fat phobia? You want to know why? I mean, we have so many statistics about medical weight stigma, but you want to know why they get away with it? Because the GMC is doing nothing to enforce it. Medical weight stigma is wrong. According to Domain 4 of Good Medical Practice, GMC guidelines, the thing they were quoting me on, right? Paragraph 65. There are many, many paragraphs before that where they speak specifically about discrimination. Medical weight stigma is a breach of duty of care in the UK, explicitly. You want to know why doctors get away with it every day? Because the GMC refused to enforce it. The GMC refused to enforce medical misogyny. Rules against medical misogyny. And the GMC refuses to enforce rules against transphobia and racism. They will not enforce it because they, even though they claim have no unconscious bias, are massively biased. And we know this to be the case. We know that these systems are set up to support white supremacy, to uphold white supremacy. And anyone who dares challenge white supremacy in any way is going to be attacked, not even ignored, attacked, threatened, lose their ability to work, become unemployable because they dared step out of line. So you ask yourself whether you think that something needs to change, whether you think that something needs to be done about this. I don't care anymore. I can't stop them. I can't fight against them. Even if I try, I don't know that I want to go through this feeling of dread anymore. I just want to be done with it. I'm going to resign my registration. My registration, my license to practice, I have to renew it in August, and I'm not going to renew it. So I won't have a license to practice, and I will no longer be a medical doctor. And I've made my peace with that because I can't possibly work knowing what the GMC can do to me. I can't. I've made my peace with that, so it's not personal anymore. But I need people to know what's going on. And I need people to ask themselves whether it's fair, whether it's right, or whether we're going to do something about it. Whether we're going to allow doctors to continue to get away with this discrimination, or whether we are finally going to do what we're supposed to have been doing this entire time, which is putting things into place, systems and structures into place to prevent them from happening. Putting system and structures into place that protect the most vulnerable amongst us. You know, if any profession is going to do it, it needs to be the health profession. We need to lead the fucking way. We need to be the standard by which everyone follows. Because look, every profession needs to do that, right? Every part of the world needs to do that. But surely the healthcare profession should be leading the way. I've said enough. I hope you'll join me for a much more light-hearted podcast next week. Thank you for listening. And this is just going to be a constant work in progress. I'm sure I will keep people updated, and maybe I will talk about more about this in the future. But as of now, I am making this public so that other people can see exactly how the GMC have treated me as an individual, and more importantly, the beliefs and values that they hold. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.